It's time we all talked about a serious problem in Monster Hunter World. The problem? A lack of Barioth. There are so many monsters with so little time, so little space in this game, it's honestly a big crime. Looking at all these environments and all these cool places, we have a serious lack of seriously cool faces. These new monsters are fantastic, they're such and nice, but I wouldn't mind a few monsters returning in the Iceborne expansion, especially ones with freezing breath, ones with a thick white coat, not that one, who only come to bring death. If you're a fan of cats and tails and snow and winter into tornadoes, and you love this cat who uses the snow in order to become your greatest foe, so without further ado and with plenty of time to savor it, let's talk about a monster who's surely a fan favorite. Ladies and gentlemen, Iceborne is getting closer and closer, and every week we have brand new information. So how long is it until we see a confirmation of Barioth's return? Honestly, who knows if that'll even happen. But why should it happen, and how should it be done? As for why Barioth should be an Iceborne, then, the reason is actually quite simple. He is a pseudo-wyvern, which is a community-devised subcategory of flying wyvern that uses his forelimbs much more as arms than as wings, even though they all either have wings or could have had wings at one point in their evolutionary journey. There are 4 other pseudo-wyverns, 2 of which are Eucanlos and Acantor, which I doubt will come to World, but I would be ecstatic to see them, and the other 2, who happen to be the ones who share the exact skeleton with Barioth, are Nargacuga and Tigrex, who are already confirmed for Iceborne, meaning that Barioth's baby bones are already ready to go. On top of that, the 3 of them coexisting is sort of important, as while many people like to ignore Barioth, he is very specifically a part of a trio with Nargacuga and Tigrex. But if you needed more of a reason to include him, well, first off, his main element is ice, and we are talking about the Iceborne expansion.
That's hot.
No, it's cold, like Barioth, that's the point. Barioth doesn't particularly require a zone to be designed for him or his abilities specifically, and he fits a nice mid-game slot that a returning monster would be perfect for. Also, now that Tigrex and Nargacuga are both confirmed, I wouldn't be at all upset to see him, because I very much would have been before.
You have the right to remain.
Jokes aside, seeing Barioth instead of either of those 2 would have been a big crime, but seeing him in addition to them would be fantastic. On the note of the arrival of his cousins as well, one of the reasons Tigrex being added is perfectly explicable is that the Popo have also made it into Iceborne, as these are one of Tigrex's favorite snacks. As it happens, they are also Barioth's favorite snack because he's a dirty ripoff.
Stop! He's already dead.
Sorry, I'll stop that. I do like Barioth, it's just hard not to take shots at him, especially if you're using a bowgun. Don't look at me like that, you're the one who decided I was funny. Barioth is a monster who would benefit a particularly large amount from World's graphical fidelity, as his texture was never high resolution enough to do him justice in the old games, at least not in comparison to his description. Barioth's scales are absolutely covered in spikes, and in some areas he can be quite the fluffy boy, particularly on his arms, but in-game he just sort of looks like he has about an inch of fur all the way along his entire body. And speaking of his body, he suffers heavily from looking like he's made of 70 triangles stitched together, which is another thing just so easily fixed by having him in the new engine with the new resolution and actually being able to make his hair look more like hair, and fixing the curves of his body would be almost guaranteed to bring him into a new generation as well. Barioth, oddly enough, is one of the monsters I think would do the best in Iceborne, simply because of how much more it would let him be, well, him.
What you talking about, Willis?
You can feel while fighting him that he has such a unique personality, with the way his attacks all have this bit of build-up, and even the fact that he can't use his ice breath while exhausted, and the way he moves is very unusual compared to most other monsters as well, as he incorporates a lot of slidiness due to his icy surroundings. As an ice monster, he would fit in perfectly in the new map, the Hoarfrost Reach, and I already know exactly where I'd want to put him on that map, and it is in this area where the Popo are shown, the one with knee-deep snow under you, with all of those slidey moves I mentioned in combination with how much he just sort of rotates and flings his body around. He would just be throwing snow everywhere, and I can only see that enhancing the fight and making it a genuinely unique experience to fight him. As a whole, bringing Barioth to Iceborne will make him feel more like a real creature, and that is why I want it to happen. But how do I want it to happen?
Why you ask me that?
To bring Barioth into the game, obviously the only important change is nothing, because he's a perfect little snowball. See, I can be nice to him too, right before insulting his entire moveset. Yeah, my main issue with Barioth's abilities is that 90% of them have the most obvious wind-up animations, much like Zamtrios. Most of his abilities stem from him entering a position before firing off, so to say. He either pounces away from you or just poses sideways, so he even flies into the air as a wind-up for one of two possible follow-ups. I've talked about monsters having systems like this before, and I get it from a design standpoint. It allows you to make the monster move quicker during its actual attacks, while giving players a proper amount of prep time because of the pose before the attack. However, what winds up happening is
Long live the king.
half of the fight is spent with you and the monster staring at each other because you can't attack them during that time unless you expect to flinch them, and they can't attack because of their robotic programming.
Don't date robots! Brought to you by Space Pope.
Which is actually my exact issue with this style of fighting from monsters. It doesn't feel alive. It feels forced, just dead. It needs to be changed if you're going to bring Barioth to World, or else I swear to God himself, I will find a way to stop you. But the way to fix it is relatively simple, at least from an idea generation standpoint. Just make him move instead of posing still. Think of Odogaron and how he fights. A lot of jumping backwards and a lot of moving in ways that don't necessarily deal damage, but it never feels like the fight is stopped. He's always moving even if he's rarely attacking. I never feel like I am waiting for Odogaron to do something because he's actively moving, almost like he's stalking you, which is why this would work perfectly for a monster based on a saber-toothed tiger like Barioth. Have him jump back, but make it look like the jump back is part of the follow-up attack, like he did it to reposition, and have the momentum of it be part of the animation rather than just having it look like he jumped backwards just to jump forwards again. The elephant in the room is unfortunately not Gammoth.
I miss you, Mother!
But it's the snowman ailment, which you get when hit by Barioth's snowball or tornado. This status covers you in snow for a time or until you are hit by an ally, and while as a mechanic it is neat and it fills a good role in the old games, not only is this status as a whole not involved in World at all, but the implementation of it would have to be very different than its classic incarnation, for the simple reason of World's realism. World has a number of silly moments and armor pieces and weapons scattered in there, but none of it is that silly, and on top of that, none of it is forced upon you or even hugely encouraged, as none of the silly weapons or armor are actually decent enough to use in endgame without significantly gimping yourself, and nothing on the story or base characters are meant to be taken silly at all. So the game is going for super realistic and serious in most situations. So what kind of space does that leave for an ailment that creates a snowball around 80% of your body and has you walk around like you're carrying something until your friend hits you? Well, the way I see it, this could go two ways, one of which is to remove it entirely. The debuff isn't hugely necessary in the game. It fills a similar role to stun, and for the attack it is attached to in Barioth's case, it could easily be swapped to just your classic ice debuff. However, Capcom could absolutely just change it to be a more reasonable visual and change the name. Maybe call it something like Deep Freeze and cover the player in ice from knee to shoulder. It would still look a little silly, but if you made the ice look good, honestly I would be 100% distracted by the way it looks and totally forget the fact that I'm a human popsicle. To cap off the abilities section then, I want to talk really quickly about his tail. One of Barioth's hallmarks is his club-like tail, but he really only uses it properly for his tail sweep. There is so much potential for a weaponized tail, especially for a monster who would undoubtedly be surrounded by a couple of feet of snow, hiding the movements of said appendage until it is a proper threat, and allowing it to fling the snow at people. Use it for a few more moves. Same with his claws, by the way. He's a big cat, for fuck's sake. Why does he never just swipe at you like a big cat? I know it'd be a simple little move, but simple little moves like that are what make the monsters feel truly alive. I mean, he's got these sharp-ass, long-ass claws, and not once does he just sort of swipe it unless he's using his entire body weight at you. In summary then, Barioth should be in World because both his skeleton and the two other monsters in his little monster trio are already confirmed. He is icy, he is slidey, he is fun, and he would look great with remastered pixels. His moveset could use a few changes here and there, but all the changes are relatively simple, and would only serve to not only make his fight more enjoyable, but make him fit perfectly into the standards already set by Monster Hunter World. I've been Cotton Dinosaur, and this has been Barioth. Let me know what other monsters you'd like to see in Monster Hunter World Iceborne Iceborne and why. Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the little notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. This is the brand new outro to tell you all the things that you do that we love, so let's start with something simple and say, oh, we love your eyes. When they're watching us play video games, when we make a bunch of jokes that are kinda lame, or when they gaze upon our failures as we try to kill the monsters or important news about the kingdom Animalia. Rage, Continent, Hollow, we're all here, talking about the things you want to hear, so if you want to be the first to hear, like and subscribe and the bell and we'll cheer. Some of you are patrons even though we are all the noobs and you're the pros. There's nothing we can do to thank you. No, really, there's nothing we could possibly do. Goodbye.